Here, the path to glory isn't marked by signs or flags, but by the frozen, preserved bodies of the hundreds who never made it down. Today, we aren't just climbing a mountain, we are stepping into the Rainbow Valley. We are entering the death zone. Imagine standing at the cruising altitude of a commercial airliner. The sky above you isn't the soft blue you are used to. It is a deep, bruised purple, bordering on black, even at high noon. The wind here doesn't just blow, it screams, tearing at your suit with hurricane force. Every step you take requires a willpower that defies biology. You are taking 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, just to summon the energy to lift your boot 6 inches. You are standing on the roof of the world, but you are also slowly dying. Welcome to Mount Everest, the mother of the world, or Chomolungma, as it is known to the Tibetans. Specifically, welcome to the area above 8,000 meters, roughly 26,000 feet. Climbers call this the death zone. And it is not a nickname given for dramatic flair. It is a literal physiological description.
In 1996, 8 people died in a single day on Everest. Scientists believe many, if not all of those deaths, could have been due to hypoxia, or lack of oxygen to the brain.
Judgment becomes impaired, person becomes confused. They don't even know where they are as it gets worse. People hallucinate. So all sorts of mental changes can take place as the brain starts to become more and more abnormal.
To understand the death zone, we first have to understand the history of human ambition. For centuries, this mountain sat in silence, guarded by local law and the sheer impossibility of its geography. It wasn't until the early 20th century that the British Empire, having lost the race to the North and South Poles, turned its eyes upward. They called it the Third Pole. In 1924, a man named George Mallory, arguably the finest climber of his generation, famously told a reporter he wanted to climb Everest simply because it is there. That quote has become romanticized, but the reality of Mallory's expedition was anything but romantic. It was a brutal siege against the elements. Mallory and his young partner, Andrew Irvine, were dressed in layers of gabardine, wool, and silk clothing that you might wear for a brisk winter walk in London, not for the negative 40-degree temperatures of the stratosphere. They were last seen on the 8th of June 1924, merely dots moving upward into the mists near the summit. They never returned. For 75 years, the mystery of whether they reached the top before succumbing to the death zone haunted the climbing world. It wasn't until 1999 that Mallory's body was found.
Wind. I didn't know what that was, so I saw that and I go, I'm gonna go look at this. So I was looking up at this yellow thing and I looked over to my right and all of a sudden I saw a patch of white that wasn't rock and it wasn't snow. And all of a sudden, I'm gonna go look over here. And as I started traversing closer to this, I saw what appeared to be the lower part of a leg, and it was a heel. And I ascertained it was an old body, hobnail boots, natural fiber clothing. It all worn away, and it was his bare upper back was there, his torso was exposed.
His body told a story of a violent fall, but it kept the secret of the summit. This was the world's first high-profile introduction to the cruelty of high altitude. So, what actually happens to you when you cross that invisible line at 8,000 meters? Why is it called the death zone? At sea level, the air is thick with oxygen. Your blood is saturated with it, feeding your brain and muscles effortlessly. But on the upper slopes of Everest, there is only about 1/3 of the oxygen available at sea level. Your body enters a state of panic. To compensate, your heart rate skyrockets, even at rest.
The breathing becomes unbelievably difficult. You feel like you're one huge lung. The heart rate at rest becomes higher and higher. The maximum heart rate becomes lower and lower. And as you go higher, those two get closer and closer together. And of course, when your resting heart rate equals your maximum heart rate, all you can do is rest. You can't do any more physical work.
Even more terrifying is high-altitude cerebral edema, or HACE. This is when the brain swells inside the skull.
And so maybe somebody who's had a little bit of acute mountain sickness, they've been kind of ignoring it, and they're like, yeah, it's just altitude, I don't feel that good. High altitude pulmonary edema, high altitude cerebral edema are our greatest concerns, and they're not easy to diagnose. High altitude pulmonary edema, particularly, it's a continuum of brain swelling, and this brain swelling is caused by a number of things. One thing is when your brain gets hypoxic, it opens up the blood flow to the brain. And the way it kills you is your brain is a walnut in a shell, right? The shell is your skull. If it swells, it can only go so far. The only way for your brain to get out of the shell is to go down through the bottom of your skull, which is not compatible with it.
In this state, the mountain is a ticking clock. Most climbers, even those on supplemental oxygen, have perhaps 16 to 20 hours to get from Camp 4 to the summit and back. If you stop, you die. If you run out of oxygen, you die. If you help someone else for too long, you both die. This brutal calculus has created one of the most macabre features of Mount Everest, the Rainbow Valley. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? But the name is a grim reference to the bright blue, red, and orange down suits of dead bodies that litter the northeast ridge. Those who die on Everest usually stay on Everest. For years, one of the most famous landmarks in the death zone was Green Boots. Believed to be the body of Indian climber Tsewang Palja, who died in the disastrous 1996 storm, he lay curled in a limestone alcove near the summit. For 2 decades, every climber on the north side had to step over his bright green climbing boots to reach the top. He became a marker of altitude, a silent sentry. While his body was eventually moved out of sight in 2014, the psychological impact of seeing him, of stepping past a human being who was once just as ambitious and alive as you are, is something that changes a climber forever. Or consider the tragedy of Francis Arsentiev, known as the Sleeping Beauty of Everest. In 1998, she climbed without bottled oxygen. On the descent, she collapsed. A team of Uzbek climbers found her, and later, Ian Woodall and Kathy O'Dowd found her. She was still alive, begging them not to leave her, but they were in the death zone. They had limited oxygen and their own survival to think of. They tried to help for an hour, but she was dead weight in a place where gravity is the enemy. They had to make the heart-wrenching decision to leave her behind. It took Woodall 9 years to return, find her body, and drop it over the edge of the mountain to give her a proper burial out of sight. These stories lead us to the most infamous year in the mountain's history. As we look at the mountain today, climate change is altering the death zone yet again. The glaciers are melting. The famous Hillary Step, a rocky outcrop that was the last great obstacle before the summit, has physically changed, altering the route. Bodies that have been buried in snow for decades are beginning to emerge as the ice recedes, a grim reminder of the mountain's history surfacing to face the present. So, why do we do it? Why do hundreds of people every year pay tens of thousands of dollars to enter a zone where life is chemically impossible? Perhaps it is because the death zone represents the ultimate frontier of human endurance. It is the one place left on Earth where money cannot buy survival. Mount Everest remains a place of profound beauty and profound horror. It is a cathedral of ice where the best and worst of humanity are put on display. From the heroic rescue efforts of climbers abandoning their summit dreams to save a stranger, to the callousness of those stepping over the dying to reach the top, the death zone amplifies who we are. As you sit here, breathing the thick, rich air of sea level, take a deep breath, feel your lungs expand. That simple act is a luxury that has cost hundreds of men and women their lives on the slopes of Chomolungma. The mountain stands as it always has, indifferent, majestic, and deadly. It is not a place to be conquered. It is a place that merely tolerates our presence, and only for a fleeting, breathless moment. Thank you for joining me on this ascent. Stay curious, stay adventurous, and always respect the history beneath your feet. We've survived the freezing thin air, but next, we enter a place where the danger is invisible and eternal. Join me as we unlock the gates to the exclusion zone and walk the silent, radioactive streets of Pripyat. Up next, the tragedy and the time capsule of Chernobyl.